Hey everyone, welcome back to Mazzocco Guitars and part 2 of this series on this Guild JF30 as we continue work on putting this thing back together. So here's where we're at. Part 1, we left off with we got the neck off of this guitar, which was a very long, tedious process because of the construction of the Guild neck and the way it's designed and put together. So now what we've got to do is we have to fix all of this here where the top cracked and came apart and came loose from the bracing underneath. You can see here now I'm able to put this palette knife all the way under here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just remove this part of the top here, and that way we can get everything cleaned up really nice, get it all realigned the way it's supposed to be, and we'll put some reinforcement on the underneath side too, as well as gluing everything back together clean, just to try to avoid anything like this from being a problem and happening again. So let's go ahead and get started. And just a real quick reminder too that if you've enjoyed what you've seen so far, be sure and subscribe to this channel. If you haven't already, hit the like button and the notifications so that you can keep up to date with what we're doing here in the Mazzocco Guitars workshop, whether we are in our home workshop at Mazzocco Guitars, or we are here at the Palin Music Center workshop where I do a lot of my work for them. So if you do have anything here, if you're here in the Joplin area, be sure and swing by, check out what we've got out on the floor. If you're in need of some repair yourself, bring it to me and I'd love to take a look at it and see if we can work that out for you. So I've got my iron heated up, and so I'm just going to go ahead and put this on here, and it's kind of like doing what we've done with the fretboard extension. Make sure I keep it off of that pick guard because I don't want to melt that. And we do want to be careful about not getting it too hot because I don't want to melt the finish. I'm just going to put on there in short bursts. So that is working. I'm starting to get underneath the head block area. So I was able to remove the spruce that lays underneath the fretboard, and as you may have noticed, it actually came off in two pieces. That's okay. I'm going to use this to my advantage. I noticed that it was starting to split just a little bit, and I was worried at first, but then I got to thinking, right here, because it's been cracked for such a long time, it actually started to shrink up a little bit this way. And so it was creating a little bit of a gap between the where the soundboard is and then this piece underneath. There was a little bit of a gap. It was creating a little bit of a gap right here, you can see. With it being broken in two pieces, what I can do now is I can go ahead and I can, when I glue this back together, I can press it in so that it is uptight right there, eliminating that crack. And then I can also do the same thing on this side, and then now I have room. If I need to, I can splice in another piece of spruce in between the two. So it's going to make the whole joint a lot better in the end, I believe. But what I do need to do is I need to make a piece to go underneath right here. That's going to be able to tie the whole thing together, and that's going to be a piece of cross grain spruce, something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and get to work on that. Alright, so a little change of scenery. We made our way over to the Mazzocco Guitars workshop, And we're going to do a little job here. It's going to require a little bit more noise and mess than I can make in the studio over at the guitar store. So what we're going to do here is we're going to make the patch to go on the inside of the sound hole. I found a nice piece of spruce here that I can use. It's an offcut from a build that I had done a while back ago. Always keep this stuff around because you never know when you're going to need it, and you will need it. So the way we're going to do this is with a circle cutter jig. Normally we would have a setup for 4 inches for the sound hole, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to back it off just a little bit so that it finishes cutting out a radius of 4 1/8, and so for half of the hole that's going to be a 1/16 inch reveal. So that way what it's going to do is the patch is going to be back offset just about a 1/16 of an inch from the edge of the sound hole. So that way we get it real close to the edge of the sound hole but not right up on it. And then we'll trim it all up, put it in place when we get back over to the studio at the store. So now I'm going to start working on getting all of this glued back together, and as you can see, it was already loose below this upper brace right here. I can get the knife all the way in back to here, and then also we're a little bit loose on the edge. So we're going to try to squeeze some glue in those places to get this all shored up. It looks like we're loose here, not so much here. But we're going to get that all taken care of. In fact, we may go ahead and just finish loosening all of this up. That way we can just kind of just start over all new and not have something binding us up. So to do that, we're going to have to get all of this cleaned up, all this old glue off of here, and even clean up on the underneath sides of here. So let's go ahead and get that started. What we're going to do, scrape this head block clean. I'm just going to use this scraper that I use. It's from a block plane iron. I like to use one of these for this kind of stuff. So gotta remember this binding is loose, so I don't want to wipe it off too hard or that could go flying and then I'd never find it. Alright, so as you can see, I've got the head block and the top of this brace all cleaned off. Now I know that I'm going to have to inject some glue underneath here, and of course you can't glue on top of glue because that doesn't work. So I'm going to have to clean that up on the inside of there just a little bit, and here's how we're going to do that. Okay, so I got that cleaned up. I think it's going to make a good glue joint in there. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and start the gluing process. And in order to keep this simple and tidy, I'm going to just do one side at a time. So we're just going to use some regular Titebond glue. Use our small palette knife to push it down into the joint. Use our damp rag to keep things clean. We'll also clean everything up right here as well, because we have those other pieces that are going to have to come in there that we're patched back in. Now, something else I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take some of this masking tape. There we go, get it started. And since this binding is loose, I'm going to take this piece of tape and run it behind this binding and purfling, and we're just going to tape that down like so, just to keep it out of the way and keep from accidentally gluing it in to what we're doing here as well. I'm just going to use a wood caul here. This is just a piece of wood, and I've put some clear tape on the one side of it, and that helps to keep it from sticking. I'll put another one here. Okay, and we will let that set. Now while we're letting that set up, we can go ahead and clean up the back of these pieces that go underneath the fretboard. Now this here is a lesson in grain run out, because you see, as you go this way, I don't know if you can see this or not, but as you go this way, the grain has a tendency to want to chip up. So if I scrape this way, see how it all chips up? And so it does that all over here. So what you really want to do is come the opposite direction, so that you go with the grain of that run out. So now this is where it's helpful to understand grain direction. Since this side, the run out was going this way, so we needed to scrape this way. This side is the book matched piece of it. So where's the grain going to be running on this one? Well, the opposite direction. So we're actually going to want to scrape from this side here. Now another thing here that I'm going to do is that I am anticipating that I'm going to have to splice in a piece right in the middle here so that I can spread these out the way they need to be. So I'm just going to go ahead and use this little block plane and just true up a nice straight edge. Yeah, that looks good. I do find it interesting that the center joint is so far off of the center line. It really should be more like right about here. Doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but it does throw off the eye just a bit. Alright, so I went ahead and glued up the other side here. I just did that off camera because it was just more of the same. But now I'm ready to go ahead and start piecing in my pieces of soundboard here. And I also went ahead and I made sure that the edges all lined up really nice. They were a little janky from the way that they pulled out. So again, I went ahead and glued the other side on and got that in just like I did the first side. And now we have this gap here in the middle that we need to fill. And so what I did, I had a spare piece of spruce that I had lying around, and so I just took and cut a piece to fit inside here, and we've got it right here. And so it's a little bit tapered, which is great because that way we can just get it and snug it in. And I have this end marked, that way I don't get confused. So all we have to do now is just go ahead and get that glued in. So now this is all in here really good and tight. There's really not any need to clamp it down at this point, but what I am going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put a clamp right here just to try to keep this all good and even. Alright, so we've got our piece glued in place here. Now we're going to come in and just clean it up and kind of work the sound hole so, you know, to keep the nice round shape to it. Alright, so what we've got here now, I'm going to go ahead and put my mirrors in here. The mirrors are scratched up pretty bad, but I'm just going to do the best we can with what we have here. So here's what we see is this is the underneath side. We're looking at the underneath side of just north of the sound hole here. And then this is the brace that runs along the top of the sound hole, and that's what you can see right here, the reflection of that in the mirror. So our sound hole is here. This brace is here. Now we need to have something to shore up this area right here because our cracks are right here and right here. And also to shore up that joint where we added that extra splice in there. So what we've got here is this piece that's going to sit in here just like that on the inside. So we've got to figure where that needs to line up here along this little popsicle stick here, and then this one over here as well, and then up against the brace right there so that it fits up against the brace and on the inside of the sound hole, so that's offset just a bit, just like it is on here, but on the inside. So first of all, we've got quite a bit we need to take off. Okay, so that looks great. That is just inside. The camera angle makes it look like it's poking out, but that's because it's just being held down still by the little sound hole braces here on each side. So I know you can't see what I'm doing here, but I'm just making a little mark. Alright, so there's my starting point. I can start cutting. So that angle is really not too far off, but I'll tell you what we've got is we've got gobs of glue, because if I hold it up tight to the soundboard, it only goes that far. And you can see that big old gap right there. And that is just old dried glue. So I'm going to have to clean some of that out. I'm going to adjust my angle a little bit so I can still come off of that just a little bit here. Okay, that's looking really good. I'm going to take some of the length off. Okay, so I really like that fit right there. But first, of course, okay, so we've got that piece in here. You can see my mirror is pretty scratched up. It's hard to get a real good image of it. But I think you can pretty clearly see here that we got the piece comes right here over the sound hole and over here, so a nice little patch with a little reveal around the sound hole so it's not right up on it. Try to do a little touch-up work. So to touch this up a little bit, I'm going to be using some of the GluBoost fill and finish. I love this stuff. So I'm using the regular viscosity for most of this, but this area right here along the edge of the pick guard, I'm going to use some of the super thin. That way it doesn't build up on me. I don't have as much scraping to do along that pick guard. Now give it all spray with the accelerator. And then it doesn't take hardly anything for that to dry. And then you're ready to just start scraping it down. With that accelerator, it's just boom, done. So now we're going to let that dry. I think we're going to call it a day. I think we're going to call it a part. That's the end of part 2. So the next time you see me will be part 3. And we're going to get started on putting the neck back on this thing and then hopefully get it strung up and ready to go. And thanks for coming along with me on this journey. I hope you've enjoyed yourself so far. If you have, please be sure and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and give this video a like and hit the little bell so that you know when part 3 comes around. And until then, we'll see you next time.